Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the final and third week of Hireology's fourth annual Elevate, the only human capital focused event dedicated to retail automotive. My name is Jason Stein, publisher of Automotive News. Great to be here with you again today. For those of you joining us again, we're happy to have you back. For those of you with us for the first time, we welcome you in. We've got an exciting lineup here for you to continue our focus on elevating the conversation around people operations at the dealership. And those of you who were with us last week will know we had a panel of industry leaders talk about how technology is really shaping the future of work in the retail space and how we support our teams, how it will impact the way we sell and service vehicles, and ultimately what our teams look like are really the core essentials to all of that. The panelists included Tyler Anderson of DealerTrack, Peter Fong of Orbi, Elizabeth Shiloh of NetChecks, and finally, Hireology's own Adam Robinson. So one key takeaway for me is that COVID-19 now, as we enter our seventh week here in North America, has been a catalyst, seventh month rather, has been a catalyst for change that this industry had been starting on for years. And we'd actually been covering the impending digital revolution and the future of the buying cycle for some time now. And as Peter Fong said, it's finally here. Now, what each panelist saw is that the progressive dealers are embracing this and have the potential to be extremely successful and outpace their peers. What does this change look like? Well, it's pulling more of the buying process online. There's better BDC management, payroll management, better marketing tools, and hiring process. One area that was identified is having top talent that can really leverage your software and process and continue to improve upon them. And it's with that in mind that Hireology will be focusing today on the new applicant economy and the applicant experience. First, we're going to hear from Adam. Hireology's just put a new research study in the market in response to COVID-19. They surveyed recent job applicants and hires since October of last year to identify motivating factors and job expectations from recruitment to retirement to help you at the dealership make better people operations strategy decisions. Adam's going to be covering that study, and then we're going to follow that with a panel of two speakers. Very excited to have Facebook and Twitter with us today. So with that, I'll introduce Adam Robinson again for the third week. Adam, of course, is the co-founder and CEO of Hireology, where he's on a mission to help businesses succeed by building exceptional teams and workplace culture. He's a nationally recognized keynote speaker, author of The Best Team Wins, Build Your Business Through Predictive Hiring, and a columnist for Inc. magazine. He's also a three-time finalist for EY Entrepreneur of the Year and named a top 25 HR industry game changer by Workforce magazine. Under Adam's leadership, Hireology was ranked number 94 on the Inc. 500 list of America's fastest growing companies in 2016 and has been on the Inc. 5000 list each of the last 5 years. Hireology has twice been recognized nationally as a top 50 best workplace by Inc. magazine and a top company culture by Entrepreneur magazine. Adam, the floor is yours.
Jason, thank you so much. And for those of you who have been with us every week, thank you once again for joining us for Hireology's fourth annual Elevate conference, virtually, of course. If you've been with us before or heard me speak for the past few years, you know that we have been facing unprecedented low unemployment levels for the last decade. At last year's NADA convention, we were talking about how we could possibly staff our dealerships when every able-bodied person was employed in the United States. And so, you know, we all know this chart. It's been really tough with unemployment really bottoming at 3.5% in February of 2020. Of course, the world is very different now today. In fact, I talked to Jason in Automotive News about what the importance of having a good team means regardless of economic conditions. And the competitive advantage you create in your market is really dependent on the team that you surround yourself with. And so when I talked to him in February, we were talking about talent scarcity. Little did I realize 2 weeks later, we'd be facing down a global pandemic and the second crisis this industry has faced in the last decade. And so, you know, here we are working remotely. At Hireology, we've taken our entire team remote for the rest of 2020 and possibly well into 2021. And we've all been on this economic roller coaster ride together. Here is what, just to recap the last two sessions, here's what an earlier chart of the unemployment rate looks like post-COVID. So April, we saw, I mean, truly Great Depression era spike in unemployment and things look pretty rough. And while we're not back certainly to 3.5%, we've made a lot of progress over the summer as we started to reopen businesses and brought people back from furloughs. We've got a long way to go. And I know for most of you, the immediate future seems somewhat uncertain. There's a lot going on in the world. But unemployment is down. The number of job seekers are increasing, and we want to spend the time we have here together at the start of this presentation talking about attitudes toward hiring, toward employment, toward the automotive retail sector. Last 2 weeks, I've told you that there are three things we know to be true right now. Three things that are always constant. Number one, your team is your most critical asset. Now more than ever in this business, people are critical as we carry less staff and work to hit unit and revenue targets. And the people in these seats are essential to your survival. It is no longer about carrying a lot of headcount because you expect turnover. It's about having the right people in the seat and selling more cars and more service per headcount that you have on staff. Second, the roles in this industry are always going to be hard to fill. Now, this is an issue that faces all industries, but for auto dealerships, you know, it's the traditional technician shortage we hear about every year, or leadership roles, GMs, just very tough to find good ones and keep them. We're always going to have the shortage. And then third, the thing that's true is those leaders that focus on their team will win. Business, regardless of industry, and the leaders in these businesses are tasked with finding and keeping the best. So how to hire, how to manage, how to support, and even how to fire people the right way. When you get that right, you're on your path to winning and creating sustained competitive advantage. And the final recap here is on applicant volume. So what you're looking at right now is Hireology data on applicant volume in automotive retail. And you may be saying in the previous slide, you know, I've got all kinds of things to worry about. Why these three things right now? The interesting thing is we're always going to have roles to fill, whether it's today, tomorrow, or in a week. And right now we have the opportunity to attract talent into our industry, unlike we have ever had before. In fact, we're already seeing the applicant economy bounce back with a fervor. And you can see that here. We have returned to pre-COVID applicant levels. Dealerships have struggled to gain mind share of top talent in the past. And so as we think about industries that have been impacted, I mean, really severely impacted, we have an opportunity to reach into hospitality, service, and retail industries that have been impacted and tell our story and attract those applicants into our business. So with that in mind, I'd like to talk about our 2020 applicant experience report. We put a survey in market to look at what is motivating today's job seeker. And we, as Jason mentioned, we surveyed those who have been hired in this industry since October of 2019. So it includes about half the data pre-COVID, about half the data post-COVID. And we looked at results in 4 key areas. Number one, what does top talent think of our industry? 2, what are the motivators that initiate and drive a job search? 3, what kind of behaviors can we expect from applicants and top applicants as they're going through the hiring process? And 4, what do they expect from their employers in today's world? The Hireology team will be making this study available to all of you who are participating in Elevate after this webinar and releasing it to the broader industry after that. So let's dive in and take a look at some of the key points from this research that I think are most important. The first here, and one that may surprise some of you, but certainly not me, is that once someone is working at a dealership, their perception of the job is extremely positive. Now, last year at Elevate, Tammy Darvish of Leader Automotive and Auto Canada, I think, said it best. Retail automotive is the best kept secret for today's job seekers. And I think this proves it. How can we lose top talent to other positions when we have such a high rating, especially in comparison to some of the other retail positions in the market. So if you look at folks who start a retail job outside of automotive, about 60% of those who take the job once in it in the early days view it as a positive experience. When you look at that in automotive dealerships, just really surprising statistic, honestly, 94% of people report that they're glad they're here once they're here in the early days of their employment, a 94% positive experience rating, among the highest in any industry. And so this makes the high turnover numbers we have in this industry year after year seem even more alarming. Because if people are willing to say they have a high positive perception of the jobs we have once they're in those jobs, what in the world causes us to have 70% annual turnover in sales roles, for example, or 90% annual turnover from female sales employees in this business? Let's take a look at that. So here we have the leading factors on the front end of the process that cause people to move on from their position. Right. So I want to lean into this here. The higher rated causes of initiating a job search, right? The moment somebody says, I think it's time for me to look somewhere else. Number one, the number one reason people start to look for jobs once they're in this industry, and this is reported from the folks in the jobs, is poor culture. Number one, nearly 40% of people say among their top factors is poor workplace culture. Second is in nearly tied are better pay and better benefits. And the subtext there is really pay plans, more certain pay, less variable pay. Third up, poor management. And then finally, the top choice we see most often is lack of a career path. So the reasons people start to look for jobs outside of our industry once they're in the job: poor culture, better pay and benefits, poor management, and lack of a career path. So as we look to the next slide, I don't know about you, but a lot of these things feel like they're really within our control. So let's focus on what the singular most important ones are. What's interesting here is 60% of the top motivating factors for people to leave the business, to look outside, are completely within our control. We can control all of these things. So pay and benefits. We've talked a lot about this. Now more than ever, people want pay stability and pay security. No surprise to any of you here, we are a highly variable pay industry for the most part. Our sales professionals are paid based on gross margin or units. It's highly variable. Service technicians are paid based on the work they complete in general, not the hours that they work. Are you ready to look at that? Because what your employees are saying is that's one of the top reasons they're looking to leave the business. Second, quality management. If our people are our biggest asset, what are you doing to give them the best opportunity to learn and grow in their role? Poor culture. Now, this is a longstanding issue for many dealerships in the business. In my opinion, culture is all about intent. Are you intentional about the culture that you're building? Or is your culture being developed by default? Because the number one reason people leave is because they don't like the culture of this industry. Now, these are all the things that you have full ability to control. So I want you to ask yourself the question, at the conclusion of today's event, what's the thing that I'm going to take a deeper look at and focus on in my dealership or group that I have under my control that can positively influence my new hire's perception of working for me? Now let's look to job search channels. Someone has decided to look for a position, but where do they start their search? Just like in the consumer journey for cars or service, it's no surprise that they start with third-party sites, right? They go to the internet, they go to their favorite search engine, they initiate the process by searching for jobs. So no surprise, 80%, 80% of job seekers use job boards to find work. What's interesting though, is almost half of applicants are coming in through referral. So this continues to be a highly referential business. Good people tend to refer good people from a quality or output standpoint. Referrals continue to be the highest quality source of hires. It's just the volume happens to be low, so it's insufficient to staff all of the roles. So if job boards are high volume, low quality, and personal referrals are very, very low volume, but very high quality, what's in the middle? Well, we have this emerging set of tools that I want everyone to think about. And that's your career site, which we've spent a lot of time talking about with all of you over the years, but also alternative sources of job seekers. And here's where I have to give a plug to our friends at Facebook. Their Facebook jobs platform in our data is shown to be the single biggest alternative source of applicants, and is growing faster as an applicant source than any of these other ones, right? So Facebook jobs, people are living on their social lives, they're on Facebook, dealers are on Facebook, they're making that connection there. And you can see here in the data in the last 9 months, 12% of applicants reported using Facebook as a way to find a position. And I expect that number will continue to grow. All right, so a quick comment on search channels that drive quality. Right, some of you may be saying, this all sounds good, but my career site platform and the other channels are just not the top used platform. It's really about job boards now. Why should I be spending time and investing money in these other channels? Well, as any good marketer knows, it's more than just the volume of interest or leads that you generate, but the channels that actually drive conversion. And so while only 4% of applicants came from your career site, nearly a third of your hires are coming from that platform, right? So it's just like your consumer marketing leads. Would you rather have fewer higher quality yields that nets out to a positive, or would you rather be shoveling cash into a furnace and just trying to sift through leads of any quality? Of course, dealers know what's true about consumer leads. The same is true for job seeker leads. Now, thinking about Facebook or your career site, these platforms are mobile first and built for a mobile audience. Only 20% of respondents in our survey said they used a desktop in their job search, and less than 50% use a laptop, whereas more than two-thirds reported use of an iPhone. And we're very specific in the question of iPhone versus Android for this industry. And if talent is using their phone, two-thirds of your lead opportunity is on a mobile device. Why aren't we doing more to meet them there in that channel, right? We spent a lot of time focusing on meeting consumers in that channel. As you've heard me say before, jobs are digital products that have to be retailed direct to consumer through the channels where they're most findable. And that today emphatically is mobile. P.S. just because Michelle's on the call today is not why I'm making a plug for iPhones, but iPhones are nearly 70% of the primary source. To the next slide. We've looked at what drives an applicant to look for a new job and where and how they search. But let's take a moment and look at what the competition looks like, right? You are competing in the market for mind share and for that specific candidate. And this is really what's most enlightening for me. Fewer than 60% of job seekers today, right around 60%, are applying to less than 4 jobs. So contrary to the belief I hear when I talk to dealers that candidates are just spamming their resume all over the place, it's just not true anymore. 60% of job seekers apply to less than 4 jobs, and 40% are interviewing, spending their time interviewing with only one company. And you have to ask why that is. It may today be a symptom of the times, where if I'm going to actually take the time to go to talk to someone in person, I better have high conviction because of what's going on in the world vis-a-vis COVID. But when you have someone in that interview, 40% of the time, you're the only person they're talking to at that step. So you really have an opportunity, if you run a tight hiring process and a high quality interview process, to win that job seeker into your business as an employee, right? So really our competition is with ourselves right now once we have them in the door and we're talking to them. So they're at peak interest when they're sitting in front of you. So ask yourself, are you running the right hiring process, and are you tailoring the applicant experience in a positive way to capture this individual? Even more important than top talent is focusing on the right fit on that talent. And those that become hires, they're deemed quality, but also receive an offer, are only getting an offer from one company, right? So if it makes sense, if I'm only interviewing with one company, I'm getting an offer, it's going to be from that one company. But the fact is, consumers for jobs are not job shopping. They're very intentional about where they want to apply, interview, and work. It's no different than the car buyer journey, right? It's often been talked about how most car buyers end up buying a vehicle from the very first dealership that they talk to. It's the same consumer behavior we see on the job seeker side, which is why it is so important that as dealers, we respond quickly, professionally, and with high engagement to job seekers and applicants when they apply for our jobs, because the first to respond almost always ends up making that hire if they're a fit. Let's take a look at process. Consistent process is key to quality hiring. And the data here is clear. If you nurture someone throughout the process, if you roll out the red carpet for your job applicants, it will drive acceptance of offers. Far and away, number one influencing factor that inspired a job seeker to take your job is a positive hiring experience. There's some reasons there. The quality of your hiring experience says a lot about the quality of your management team. People want to work for managers and leaders whom they like, trust, and respect. If you provide exceptional applicant experience in the hiring process, you're communicating to your candidate, number one, people are important. Number two, they are important. And number three, you care about quality management and leadership. Right? So we talk a lot about losing out to other businesses because the offer was better, the pay was higher, their benefit program was more flexible, maybe the culture was a little bit different, the perception of that in the front end. You can overcome these comparisons if, very simply, someone feels like you're respecting them in the process. Create a long and lasting impression of your dealership here in the interview process, in the hiring process, and it will carry through to impact your business positively. Right? Positive hiring experience is the one thing you can do more than any other to impact your ability to attract quality applicants. Top talent continues to move very, very quickly. Pre-pandemic, 55% of applicants were hired within 2 weeks of submitting their first application. Post-COVID, that number is now 60%. So people are finding work faster. So it is, again, even more important to be on the ball when someone decides to apply to come work for you. Dealers continue to lose top talent to a lack of process. Pre-pandemic, 25% of job seekers were considered lost applicants. These are applicants that they applied to the role and no one ever got back to them. It's literally an unresponded to lead. Post-COVID, that number has gone up. It makes sense. We've lost some support staff and our focus is on bigger things here. But if you take the data that shows quality hiring process is the biggest influencing factor, 60% of people have a job within 2 weeks of looking. They're only interviewing with one, maybe two employers. And a third of them we're not even getting back to. This is the opportunity, right? So again, focus on high quality, fast response, and good things happen. 61% of recent retail automotive hires would be open to working in a new industry if the right opportunity came along. And this is where you see the challenge and the opportunity. is if 94% of people report a positive experience when they first start their role in our industry, but later 61% of them are open to working somewhere else after they've been in the business, what that tells you is we've got a real opportunity to deliver on the promises that we make about the quality of this business, the dynamic nature of this business, the career path opportunities, the earning potential, and the fun and professional growth that can happen when you're a part of the automotive family. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jason to invite our panelists in and continue the discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you, Adam. So let's turn the videos on and welcome our other panelists. Today, we have two industry leaders in both retail automotive and the larger digital and recruiting world. First, let's meet Michelle Harrow. Michelle is the head of recruiting for Twitter, and she's in an advisory capacity for CarForce. She's a senior strategy, operations, and retail people analytics leader with over 20 years experience in managing and optimizing functions for scalability and operational excellence for Fortune 100 companies. Prior to joining Twitter, she worked at Apple, where she led finance operations and analysis and retail people strategy and analytics during her 10-year tenure there. And prior to Apple, she worked as a management consultant at Deloitte Consulting for 11 years, focused on business technology strategy and information management. Hello, Michelle.
Hi.
And now let's welcome Bob Lanham. Bob joined Facebook in 2015 as an automotive retail lead and has since become Facebook's head of automotive retail. Bob manages a team that is responsible for the top 10 dealer groups in the US, the top resellers in the US, working with independent dealers through the manufacturers and partnerships with key DMS, CRM, and equity mining platforms. Previously, Bob was a sales director at Hulu, where he opened the Detroit territory back in 2009 when Hulu was just getting started. And prior to that, he spent 4 years at Yahoo, 3 years at Microsoft, but started his automotive career at Toyota of Sarasota, selling cars. Welcome, Bob.
Thanks for having me, Jason. Appreciate it.
Wonderful. Well, let's get right to some of our questions. There is no doubt that this has been a year of change in so many ways. And I thought we would just begin by asking you both, what kind of monumental changes have either of you seen in your own respected areas, whether it's about the future of work, retail automotive as a whole, or just how it's impacted your own business? Michelle, let's start with you.
Yeah, I would say I think there's been a significant acceleration in many different areas. In my experience at Apple in the retail environment, we were obviously looking at flexibility. And what did that really truly mean in terms of the facets of flexibility being time, location, responsibilities, pay, and benefit, and how you're really trying to drive in a greater alignment between the business's need and the employee need. And so now in today's environment, you're just simply seeing that much more accelerated, particularly in certain areas, perhaps on location. But nonetheless, I think that will continue to be a huge trend. The other areas is around obviously inclusion and diversity and how you are really reflecting that into workspaces, in particular in the retail environment. How your retail environment is essentially reflecting what your communities are looking like. And that is really coming from a place of who your customers are going to be and how you're really aligning what that experience is for your customers and what they would expect to see in terms of the diversity in the community and what you would see in that retail environment as well. And then finally is around a real sort of focus on driving towards the employee experience, and that being as a core area to essentially drive your customer sort of strategy with a real focus on how your how your employees experience are they happy? Are they satisfied? Are you driving towards that retention in your environment? That's going to actually create a pathway to revenue and customer engagement as well. So I think that's probably the three areas that I would summarize in significant trends that are continuing to accelerate.
Bob, how about you?
Yeah, echo what Michelle said. She nailed it. But one thing I'll just add to that is how the sales process has changed culture within dealerships. Because there's now this new option, which has been around for some time, but dealers have finally had to focus on it, which is digital retailing, or the ability to purchase online. It's allowed them to sell differently, which changes the culture internally, which then changes who they have the ability to hire, or potentially who they want to hire. You know, I sit in the advertising and marketing world, which is the dealer's second largest expense, right behind payroll, which is the dealer's top expense. So we have a very similar strategy that Hireology does, which is to make those two large costs a profit center and not an expense center. So echo what Michelle said, but we're seeing the sales process has truly changed how dealers can not only sell but hire.
Adam, that's that sales process changing culture. What's your view on that? We've talked about that a little bit in previous forums, but expand on it if you could.
Yeah, I think, you know, as you mentioned, we've talked about this in the first two Elevate sessions. I think the single biggest change as it relates to staffing roles and the selling process is the fact that dealers are able to move more vehicles per headcount now. They have found through the summer months with 15, 20, 30% fewer staff in some cases, they move the same number of units. Now, some of that's pent up demand and some of the crazy incentives we were running this summer, interest rates and other contributing factors. But as things stabilize, and I used this descriptor in last week's session, it's like the square root sign, right? We had a dip, a rebound, and now things are kind of flat and people are worried. Dealers are holding headcount 7 to 10% below where they had it before the pandemic. And guess what? They're selling as many cars as they did, you know, instead of 12, 11 per head, they're selling 16, 17, 18 per sales head per month. That's, you know, that equals bottom line benefit. And I'm pretty sure dealers want to keep it that way. So I think it is exciting that dealers are finally rationalizing staffing plans to cost. It's not just flood the floor. It's thinking really intently about my selling process. Where can I cross-train a product specialist or sales professional to quote on a trade, to offer financing that speaks to systems integration and just a reformulation of the way we do business. All of it accelerated by necessity. And I think those are all good things.
Bob's enthusiastically nodding his head in agreement. That bottom line benefit that Adam talked about, we're hearing it every day, every week now. Their business has just changed, right? Given cost centers, given grosses. What's your view here, Bob?
I mean, Adam's spot on. I mean, they're selling more cars with less people, and I think that has to do with the process, right? They've created a stronger process that is putting the buyer in control versus the seller, the dealership in control. And what that has turned into is more margin, because people are willing to pay a premium, and this research has been around for a while. Well, people are willing to pay a premium for a quality customer service or sales experience, and we're seeing that. And I think what digital retailing has allowed, and digital retailing isn't the majority of sales, but what allows the happen for the consumer, it just gives them another option, right? I can choose to go into the store, I can choose to do it online, I can do a hybrid. And anytime you give consumers option, they feel more comfortable, they feel more in control. And what we're hearing is they're paying that premium. They might not be negotiating that $10 or $15 per month, which equals a few $1,000s on the bottom line. So echo what Adam said as well, is I think the sales process has really changed the game for both parties, the consumer and the dealer.
Michelle, is that translating into what Twitter's seeing on the retention side, or even the pool?
Yeah, definitely. But I would say as well, in addition to the sales process, and while that's the most intuitive one at this point, just given where we are at this point and greater sort of integration between online physical experiences that we're having, there's also an opportunity on the services side as well. And that's really where my involvement around sort of Carforce essentially is how can you better create digital connection experiences for your customers who have bought from you, and identifying service opportunities and bringing them in, because there's a significant margin, kind of essentially component to that, and business case for essentially doing that. So I think as you look at the entire process, or sort of end-to-end customer experience with a car, there's sort of the sales, initial sales piece of it, and what that digital experience looks like. But I also think it's important to start exploring what the services component is also going to, and what that digital experience is going to be for customers.
Michelle, let me stay with you for a moment. Adam reviewed some pretty interesting information moments ago, especially about the impact culture and management can have on a dealer's retention capabilities. And you've got a long history in retail recruiting and operations. Is this consistent with what you've seen?
Yeah, 100%. So one thing that Apple's really known for is their 88% retention rate, which is really unheard of in the retail environment. And as I mentioned before, what was extremely core to the retail strategy is when it was launched by Ron Johnson, there was a recognition that essentially retail was a people business, and that people were going to essentially drive the success of that business. And so core to the strategy was truly coming from employees, and it was all about the employees, what their experience was, and that would translate into a good customer experience, good customer sales, and so forth. So it took a very, very different model than looking at necessarily sales targets and quotas and so forth, and really not applying that and using it more to truly what do employees need. And if they are happy, if they are satisfied, we're going to gain that retention, and as well as we're going to drive sort of our customer needs and experiences, and that would translate into sales.
How hard is it to set a culture like that, Michelle, if you don't have one focused around some of the principles that you just described at Apple?
Well, I mean, I know that the dealership environment is very different in terms of structuring, around the incentives and how that has been. So it'd be a significant sort of essentially transformation to how Apple has essentially structured itself, not necessarily, that way. Not that there's not any sales targets within that model, but it's really not the driving, force around that. But I actually don't think that it's a complex item. It's just simply very much a mindset shift. And I think that employees are going to be, the best employees are going to be expecting that. The environment is changing around the alignment between business and employees, and how we're really trying to drive to meet both of those needs. So you're going to get the greater quality of hires if someone is feeling that they are achieving their purpose, if they're happy, in that environment, that they feel that the business is surrounding around making them successful. So ultimately, I think it's both a structural, aspects that you need to integrate, but then also just sort of a different mindset around really how employees are extremely important strategy for your business.
Adam, what does the retail space need to consider if it wants to have an alignment around or changing the alignment around business and employees?
Well, step one, Jason, it starts with leaders, and the dealer principal needs to decide that they want to be good at this. That's the very first step. Is the person whose name's on the sign has to say, you know what, I recognize that this is a people business, and if we're going to compete and thrive in this market, we are going to have to be the best at the people side of our business in our market. That is easier said than done, because the next question the dealer's going to say is, okay, how much is this going to cost me? And so there is an effort required to take a look at the cost impact of high turnover and the cost impact of lost applicants and poor hiring process. And what you find is that in hard costs alone, if you're trying to make the financial argument to your dealer principal, if you're an HR leader in this session or a GM in this session, you want to make the financial argument, $16,000 in hard cost per head turned in the first year draws that never get paid back, the unemployment insurance pool that gets dinged, the benefits you paid, the cost of the workspace now even more expensive because you have to clean it 95 times a day. It's expensive to carry folks. It's expensive to train them. It's expensive to provision access to the DMS and the other systems used to do the business. The training's expensive. We have so much sunk costs tied up in folks. And then we decide to let them sink or swim and chuck them in the deep end. And that's $16,000 per head turned. The soft costs double that. So, if we're able to shave 10 points off of our turnover rate at a dealership, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars of bottom line impact for doing what is arguably the most important thing you can do to remain viable in your market, which is be a people first business.
Bob, I'll let you add your thoughts here.
Yeah, and I love what Adam just said. And I love what Michelle said about the service side of the house, which is the dealership's number one loyalty strategy, right? There's stats out there. If a dealer can simply get a customer that they sold to come into service just twice in 1 year, so 2 oil changes, they're 5 times more likely to sell that person another car. So the service is so important. But Adam was talking about the people side of it and having a quality brand or treating your people right. Well, on the flip side, I've oftentimes talked to dealer principal whose name is on the building and said, what is your brand, right? If I were to go ask somebody about, Lanham Ford, what would they say about you? And they stare at me, right? So I often, what Adam said, I love is like, if you treat your employees right, you're making money there. That $16,000 hopefully doesn't go to waste. It's the same with selling the brand of your dealership. We have a core strategy in our playbook, which is called Why Buy Here? Why should I come to dealership A versus dealership B? That's the same brand. That's only 5 miles down the road, selling the exact same car, right? So if you treat people and have the quality brand, they'll tend to buy from you. Probably the same way if you treat your employees well, right? They won't leave and they'll stay, and you'll actually make more money off them the same way that you can make more money off the consumer if you treat them well as well. So, that's sort of when I was listening to Adam, that was my first thought, which was the brand to the consumer is very similar to the brand internally to the personnel.
Bob, I want to stay with you. We talked a little bit about the changing consumer life cycle. Adam just referenced it earlier. What is Facebook focused on to help dealers make the most of this opportunity right now?
Yeah, it's what I said earlier about, advertising and marketing being a dealership's second largest expense, right behind payroll. And we truly want to make it profitable, which means we work with dealers to make sure they understand how their media, their advertising is driving impact or driving sales. I mean, you originally start to work with a dealer and first of all, they don't know everything they're buying. And then when you finally figure out what they are buying, it's a laundry list, right? And they don't know how any of it works together. They don't know how long they've been buying it. So the first thing we work with a dealer is, A, do you know what you're buying? How are you measuring it? And what is the impact of what you're buying? What is the return on investment? So we always try to work with them. Now, luckily for us, we have 231 million adults 18 plus on our platform every day, every month, and 179 every day. So what we try to explain to them is we're going to reach your current or potential customers. We're going to be one of the largest media platforms in any given marketplace. Now let's start to compare costs across the board. So, one of the things that we have learned, there's no benefit to COVID, but if there is one in my world, is that when dealers were forced to evaluate their top 3 expenses, payroll, advertising, and marketing, and their inventory or floor plan, they became smarter. They became to understand and learn more what they should and shouldn't be buying. So that's the biggest, I would say, opportunity that we've had with dealerships is, hey, we can now start to equate your second largest expenditure to sales, and then more importantly, profitability.
For Adam and Bob, NADA earlier this year, Hireology and Facebook for Jobs announced their partnership. Bob, let me ask you, why is recruiting something that Facebook is so focused on right now? And what was what was the benefit to the partnership there?
For us, I mean, it's a benefit to our mutual client, which is the dealer, right? We want to be able to use our platform that has all these people and going to be the largest aggregate of people in probably any given market. We wanted to make sure that we could provide our mutual client, the dealership, with as many qualified applicants as possible. And when a dealer goes through Hireology and then connects it to Facebook, it's instant, it's automated, so that job posting can be listed on our platform and reach all of those people the same way they would advertising, right? The same way they would market their dealership, they can market their dealership for employment. So for us, it was, again, the benefit to the client mutually, but for the dealer themselves, it was getting themselves in front of the most people in any given platform.
And Adam, how about for you in Hireology?
Well, dealers have spent a lot of time and effort and resources leveraging Facebook's power to help build their brand and to help drive sales. And the thinking here was, and I think Facebook was spot on with this, you know, if the dealer's building you know, a digital home or second home using Facebook as a platform, why don't we talk about the employment opportunities and not just the cars we're selling or the service we're selling? Like, let's give them a channel they're already investing in to get more value out of it. And when they launched this offering, I think we were one of the very first to connect it and make it live. I mean, it was for us a no-brainer. It's a platform dealers respect, that they pay a lot of attention to in terms of resources. And it was just a no-brainer to connect this, to push the jobs message through dealerships' Facebook page to help reach a broader audience. Bob said it, your consumer brand and your employment brand today are the same thing. They're not separate. You treat a consumer well, they're more likely to work for you or refer people to work for you. You treat a job applicant well, they're much more likely to buy a car or service from you. When they talk about your dealership, they could have either or both experiences. These things are the same thing today. So the tighter we can integrate employment brand and consumer brand, the better. And I really applaud Facebook for the work they did to make this product impactful. And it has been impactful in a very, very short amount of time.
And Hireology's been leveraging Facebook to help dealers diversify their sourcing pool. Give us an update on how that's going.
Yeah, I mean, it's as simple as saying, yes, I'd like to turn this on. You know, similar to the way dealers have migrated away from just buying leads and have gotten more smart about, you know, what am I getting for the dollars I'm spending? Dealers for 20 years have just bought applicants by posting on job boards, and Facebook for Jobs gives you, it's a different way to do that. It's an investment in your brand, which draws people to what you stand for. And they're very intentionally saying, I'd like to work for this dealership, versus just clicking on blind ads on a job board. It's a different kind of experience and a higher quality lead, if you want to use those phrases.
I want to shift gears for a minute. Michelle, let's go back to your Apple experience. And you were part of Apple's change in retail operations, how it hired teams to support those retail locations. And you described for us the philosophy, the culture behind all of it. But what was your focus and where did you see success there? What can be learned from what you went through?
Yeah, so I think when I came on board, I mean, obviously it's a significant global footprint in terms of, you know, retail hiring 16,000 external hires a year. But what we looked at was also thinking through internal hires and how we were actually providing an experience for the employees to drive sort of movement. And that was really kind of not just within a particular retail location, but perhaps in other types of locations, or perhaps, you know, moving up into sort of corporate. So there was a real sort of center around how we were looking at our existing workforce from a retention standpoint, around how we could potentially looking at them for growth opportunities and moving them within the retail sort of environment. The other aspect was also taking a much more sort of data-driven approach to it. as we were looking at the marketing sort of aspect, our employer brand strategy, how could we be much more specific around identifying our channels that we were using, our content that we were trying to drive people towards, and were we seeing success with that and leading to quality of hires? So that was something that we had never really measured, before, and trying to be very, very sort of intentional around not just trying to hire, but really trying to tap into and understand where we could find the best hires, and as well as that we could demonstrate that it was driving, quality hires in our business, and that we were retaining. And then finally, really continuing to drive a hiring process focused on the candidate experience, as well as from an inclusion and diversity component, and being very, very thoughtful around. It's one thing to say you want to create a diverse environment and hire people into it. It's another thing to think really strategically around how you can do that really effectively. How do you look at your sourcing opportunities? What is your hiring process experience like? Is it giving a sense of and demonstrating that there's a culture of inclusion, diversity within that work environment?
Adam, I'd be curious your thoughts on what Michelle had to share there, and how it can be applied to retail.
Yeah, I think you see consistent themes regardless of industry. It starts with intentionality. You have to decide that this is important, and that you're going to make an investment of time and resources to do it correctly. And then second, it's deciding what you stand for as an employer. If you seek to build the highest performing, most diverse workforce you can, and those things are inextricably linked. Diversity drives results. If you're looking to do that, you have to take stock of what you're currently doing today and make some changes to improve. And dealers who are doing that are better able to attract applicants. They're doing it from across the spectrum in terms of socioeconomic background, race, gender. They're building more diverse teams. Their retention rates are higher and their performance is greater. And we can show that in the data. And so dealers that focus on this are going to come out ahead, period. It is an imperative. It is no longer a nice to have. In an era when I think the long-term trend of margin decline will be here again someday, it will show up again. We're going to have to staff the stores with fewer people in order to continue to make money. And if we're going to do that, we've got to start making choices about the people model, right? What people do we need to make this work? Would I rather pay two people $500 a car, or would I rather pay one person $700-800 a car, but they can do much more, right? And everybody's better off. It is the question that I think all dealers should be asking themselves right now.
Bob, I want to go to you. We keep hearing about change and at all kinds of levels, and I'm sure Facebook's marketing tools are a big part of that change. What can dealers be prepared for with platforms like Facebook going forward, and should dealers be hiring different teams?
Yeah, to revisit what Adam said about with a click of a button, they can promote their job posting on Facebook. That's automation, right? That's making it easier to do business with you. And that's exactly what we're looking to do with our tools. 10, 12 years ago when we launched, it was complicated. Our systems required a lot of knowledge, a lot of education, a lot of tech expertise. Fast forward 12 years, and our goal is to make it much easier to do business with us, whether that's a very simple ad or one of our more complex dynamic ads. So, look for us to be launching more automated, execution-based ads where a dealer can do it themselves. And, go to your question regarding should they be hiring different teams or a dedicated team. Matt Lasher from West Hare just actually on LinkedIn did a really nice job framing why it was so important to have a team internally manage your advertising and marketing. And it's simple. It goes to what Adam said earlier, which is they become your brand, right? They're working with the general manager, they're working with the general sales manager, they're working with the service manager. They become the heart and soul of the business. They then need to take that culture internally and then advertise it externally, right? It's hard for a third party that's got thousands of clients to really be your brand, right? So you really need to have people internally that know exactly what you stand for, how you operate, what we should and should not be marketing. So to answer that question, there should at least be a team or a number of people that have become the heart and soul of your brand. So whether they execute it themselves or they still hire an agency, they're simply telling that agency what they want to do as it relates to their brand. So Matt does a really nice job explaining the importance of that on his LinkedIn profile.
Wonderful. Michelle, I want to turn to you. Where do you think dealers should be really leaning in today to change their retail operations? Where should the focus be in your mind going forward?
So is that a question in terms of retail operations or recruiting operations?
Let's say both.
Okay. Yeah. So I definitely think, yeah, we've talked about it, at length today on the call. I do think that looking at your people and recruiting of people for your business as a business problem that needs to be solved. And understanding the impact that a good employee can have on your business and really connecting the dots on that. And then developing a very purposeful strategy and hiring process, a human-centric hiring process that's really connecting to the value proposition for the employee around or candidate around why they would come and work for you. I do think that there is significant value of taking the time and being very, very purposeful around that. And then when it comes to retail operations, then how are you creating an environment that is really drawing and retaining the employees within that space? As Bob mentioned, there's a significant cost per hire impact of having to continually address sort of attrition. So there's a significant business value in thinking through what that experience is and being ensuring that is a strategy as part of your business as well. Not just simply your business strategy, your sales strategy, but really truly what's your employee strategy.
And even in more simplistic terms, Michelle, what do you think applicants and employees are really looking for? And how can businesses leverage that to make themselves more attractive?
Yeah, I think this is coming into today's time that there is a greater need for business employees, there be alignment around those needs. Ultimately, employees have a choice to work wherever they want to work for. And you want to have that mindset that they are choosing to work for you and that you're demonstrating the value to them and that you're appreciating that at everyone at its basic needs. Everyone's basic need is to be valued, recognized, and seen, and how are you making your employees essentially feel that way? So I do think it's a real sense of sort of a mindset change and how you are truly being thoughtful around how you're creating that culture and that environment that people are really looking towards. And then the other component is that there's a challenge, that there's learning, there's a challenge. This is a great opportunity right now as we are moving to more of that balance between the physical and the digital experiences. That's really exciting, to folks. So how are you really trying to lean that, create those challenges, create those opportunities for employees? Because this is sort of an exciting change to be a part of. And in the automotive space, so much innovation that's happening within the cars and how that's essentially evolving. So how do you create that sort of innovative experience within the work environment?
Adam, same question to you in simplistic terms. What do you think applicants and employees are looking for?
Well, look, you can't expect your employees to take great care of your customer if you are not, as a business, taking great care of your employees. And in the most simplistic terms possible, what I can say is dealerships need to put their people at the center of their business model. Am I arming my team with what they need to be successful so that they can serve our customers exceptionally well? Do they have access to training? Do they have access to the tools and data they need to serve that customer well? Are they paid fairly and predictably? As Michelle said, are they feeling like they're respected and seen, that they matter? These are intangibles that everyone can be focused on right now. And if we take care of our people will take care of our customer.
Bob, your view on that? After you unmute yourself, Bob.
Sorry about that. Rookie move right there. I literally just had this conversation with someone where we were talking about how, the dealership does the advertising. The name of the dealership does the advertising, which hopefully draws in the customer. But that sales experience quickly becomes personal, right? It becomes one-to-one with the sales representative on the other side of the desk. And that sales representative becomes an extension of the brand, of the dealership's brand. So, to echo Adam, once again, you got to treat your employees right. They want to be there. They're going to want you. You want them to want to represent your brand accordingly, because it becomes a very personal sale after the person engages with the dealership, because you truly are working with one person. So, totally agree with what both Adam and Michelle said on that.
Let's a couple of final questions for the panel here. Anything that you see for 2021 that you think might stand out? Are things permanently altered? What does the hiring landscape look like in 12 months? Bob, I want to start with you.
Yeah, listen, I think the why buy is going to really become more important than in the past. Dealers are so used to advertising price, but yet consumers can buy the same car just a few miles down the road, and multiple places. So we're starting to see, and it's becoming bigger, that dealers are starting to represent their brand more, which means they're starting to care about it more. They're starting to understand it more. So I truly hope we don't go back to where we were pre-COVID days. But I think the selling more with less people is hopefully here to stay. I think obviously online is here to stay, to only grow. But I think you're going to see dealerships become more brand oriented than just commodity focused in terms of selling a car. That's what I'm seeing, and that's truly what I'm hoping for in the long run.
Michelle?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that our entire world has been shifting to digital experiences, and the COVID environment created this perfect sort of test case scenario to really sort of essentially accelerate this and understand what it would be like. So I definitely think that shift to the digital and online experiences is going to just continue now that we sort of understand the benefits and how that really can integrate within our lives and continuously being more and more seamless. I also think that this time right now has provided a lot of folks to kind of take stock around what's important in their lives, what they're looking to accomplish. This has been a very deeply personal experience for many folks, if not perhaps all folks, around what we're experiencing. And so I think that that will be important around how you are truly connecting with people, how you are connecting not only just with customers, but with their own sort of employees. So I think that will continue to be an outgrowth of this experience and will continue on after it.
Adam, we spent a few weeks together here and also some other weeks earlier this year talking about the same subject. Put a capstone on everything that we've learned here over our 3-week Elevate session.
Well, first, Jason, I want to give you a very personal thank you for the job you did moderating our conference yet again. You're just exceptional at what you do. So I want to say thank you so much for being a part of it yet again. In the family at Automotive News, you're great partners, and we really value that. I think next year, the operative word is going to be flexibility. Through all the things we've talked about, we are going to be well into 2021, June, July, before there's any kind of real return to normal. And that means that the workforce is looking for flexibility from their employers. If our kids who are in physical school today get sent home because of an outbreak and we're homeschooling again, will my employer accommodate that? If I have to take a day off of work on short notice, will they accommodate that? If I can't work weekends anymore or only want to work nights, will my dealership accommodate that? Are they willing to show flexibility so that I can be my best when I'm working for them? I think it's going to require a re-examination of strategy and workplace policy, and really challenging some of the conventions that have been bedrocks of employment in this industry, which is, you go as hard as you can, eat what you kill. And this is just kind of how the business is. I think it's going to change very, very rapidly. The other really interesting thing, I think, and this is very specific and a weird way to cap the conversation, but I think we need to start asking the questions. Are we going to be requiring employees to get COVID shots to return to work in a dealership? Like, how are we going to mandate vaccinations as a condition of employment? Like, this gets super interesting. And so I think those conversations need to start happening now. It is not too early to be thinking about this, because I think it's going to be a giant mess. I really do. But if we're showing respect and flexibility and taking care of our people, and we're honest and transparent about our expectations and why we're asking them to do certain things, you build trust, you get a lot of benefit. And I think we're entering a period where we need max trust and flexibility with our teams.
Well said, well spoken as usual, Adam. And just from our own automotive news group, thank you so much for asking us to be with you on this. We're honored, humbled, and hopefully we helped out. So thank you. Thank you to Bob. Thanks to Michelle as well. Thank you to everybody over the course of the last few weeks for being part of this. It was a great end to Hireology's series Elevate, focused on elevating human capital for the retail automotive space. We appreciate you taking the time. We, of course, hope to see you in person in a room somewhere next year. It goes without saying. As a reminder, tomorrow there will be workshop sessions. If you signed up, you should have confirmation in your calendars. This will be very conversational amongst all participants. So try to find a location that best enables that. Video is preferred. If you have any questions, please contact events@hireology.com. From the folks at Automotive News, for the folks at Hireology, thank you so much for being with us, and we'll see you again soon.